Hello Unreal Engine artists, designers and developers, and welcome to the last installment of this Landscape Auto Material series. So in this last episode we're going to cover 3 final tweaks to the landscape, and in particular stay tuned for the 3rd and final one because quite a few of you asked for this in the comments. So let's get into it. So let's start off by changing the way we do our puddle darkness. At the moment we have this control in our material instance called puddle darkness, and we can vary it from 0 to 1, 0 being a completely clear puddle and 1 being a completely dark puddle. And obviously you can have values in between to affect the clarity. Now the issue with this, if I open up the material function that we use to do this, so in our material functions we have this MF puddles function here, and the way we did the clarity or darkness was by using the metallic attribute. Now the problem with that is that if we use the runtime virtual texture, the runtime virtual texture doesn't have the metallic attribute of the material. It only has the color, normal, roughness and specular. So instead of using the metallic, we can simply use the base color and multiply it by a value in order to make the colors light or darker. So let's do that instead. So what we'll do is we'll remove this lerp here for puddle darkness, and in the set material attributes we will remove the metallic. In fact, rather than remove it, what we'll do is we'll replace it with base color, because that's what we're going to write to. And where we get the material attributes here, we will add another attribute and just check that it is base color there. So we're going to get the base color it is at the moment. We're going to adjust it slightly and then rewrite it out here. And the way we're going to rewrite it is that we're going to take this puddle darkness value here, and we will do a saturate first. We could have done that before as well. That will just make sure it is always between 0 and 1. And then let's just move this down a little bit here. What we'll then do is we will do a lerp, so L on the keyboard, and we will use the mask that we've already got coming out here, the puddle mask, as our alpha. And if there is no puddle, we'll just take the base color as it is at the moment. And if the puddle is, or if the puddle is there with a value of 1, then we want to put in a value of the base color multiplied by the darkness value. So what we'll do is we'll take this out of here. In fact, we'll take it from here where we've done the little node, do a multiply, and multiply it by the darkness value, and then put that into the second pin of the lerp, and then that will be our base color. So just to reiterate again, what we're doing is if there is no puddle, we'll just take the base color as it is. If there is a puddle, we'll multiply the base color by the puddle darkness value. So we probably want to change this name as well, because if we multiply it by if we have 0 here, it will be multiplied by 0 and make it black. If it's 1 here, it will be unaffected. So actually, rather than call it puddle darkness, let's call it puddle clarity. And we'll make the default value of 1, which will be unchanged. And click on save there. All right, let's go and test this out. So let's go back to our landscape, and you see we've changed our attribute name here to puddle clarity. It should now work in reverse. So if we put it down to 0, you can see we have a completely dark puddle because it's multiplied the color by 0 to make it black. And if we make the value 1 here, we have a completely clear puddle, and then something in between will be slightly darker. So I find that 0.5 is quite a nice value for adding a little bit of definition to the puddles by darkening the color somewhat. And the benefit of this is now if I switch on the runtime virtual texture, the puddles retain that darkness value or that clarity value, because that base color is being passed through to the virtual texture. The second thing we're going to look at is the angle at which the snow lands on the top of these mountains. So currently it's as if the snow came directly from above and landed on the mountaintop, but we can change the angle as if the wind kind of was blowing from east, west, north or south. And we already have the parameter in place, we just haven't been using it so far. So if you go to your material functions and find the MF snow mask, and let's move to the start of it, you'll see that in the slope mask here, there was this slope angle that we didn't plug anything into. And by default, it's using this vector value of 0, 0, 1, and the 1 means it's coming from above, from the z-axis. So we could add a parameter here, and then we could change the angle that the snow is projected on. So let's do that. Let's just create a bit of space here. So hit 3 on the keyboard, and you will get a vector 3 here, and do convert to parameter, and we'll call this snow projection angle. In the parameters on the left here, make sure you add it into the snow group here. The sort priority you can change later depending on where you want it in the list, but I'll leave it where it is at the moment. And then we simply plug that output into the slope angle here. And let's name these red, green and blue pins as well, so that we actually know what values we're putting in. So in the parameter customization down here, channel names, we'll call the red x-axis projection, and just to make it clear, it goes from -1 to 1 like normals tend to do, and then we'll make the green channel y-axis projection -1 to 1, and finally for the blue channel, z-axis projection -1 to 1. Okay, and let's go and test this out. So save that. Let's go back to our landscape here, and so you can see the snow's actually disappeared. So I suspect I set the default value to 0 here. So if you see there's now a new parameter here, snow projection amount. So if you expand it out, you can see that our projection values are 0, 0, 0. So actually we want our default to be 0, 0, 1. So let's go and change that first. Back to the snow mask. Make the default value 1 on the z-axis. Click save there. And it hasn't actually changed it in the original one, probably because we didn't set it before we saved it originally. So let's just change the z-axis projection back to 1, and you can see that the snow reappears as if it's come from above. But if we set the x-axis projection to 1, you can see that now the snow is only coming from this direction here, from the right-hand side of the screen. And if we make the x-axis projection -1, you can see that it's coming from the left-hand side of the screen and not from the right. You're still seeing a little bit there because we haven't zeroed out the z-axis. So if we zeroed out the z-axis, you can see that that stops the snow from coming down from the top. And similarly, we can zero out this and add 1 to the y-axis projection, and it looks as though everything's back, but in fact what's happened is you're seeing the front face being filled here, and if we make the y-axis projection -1, you can see it looks like there's no snow, but there should probably be snow on the other side of the mountain, as you can see there. So you can create different snow angles by combining these values to have it coming from different directions, but it gives you a little bit more control over the way snow appears on your mountains. So have fun playing around with that. Now the third and final thing we're going to cover today, and something that quite a few of you asked for in the comments, is how you can manually paint on the landscape to remove foliage where you don't want it. So if there are any areas where you don't want the grass or rocks or whatever else you've spawned through landscape grass types or PCG to appear, you're able to sort of manually paint that out. Very easy to do, so let's just quickly change the auto landscape material and then we'll test it out. So go back to your auto landscape and find the section where you are doing the setting up the landscape grass types and physical material outputs for PCG using the different layer masks. And what we'll do is we'll simply add another set of calculations at the end to subtract an area that we can paint on in the landscape. So let's move these last two nodes over a bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these 4 subtract nodes. So in fact, I'll just duplicate them. So use Control D to duplicate and just move them over slightly. And then what I want you to do is to use the Control key on the keyboard and to drag the output of each previous subtract node to the new one. So we're moving all of these over here. And what I'll also do is I'll add a new subtract node at the top. So just add another subtract node. And what we'll do is just drag the output of this to snow and PM snow here. And then this snow mask here will go straight into this subtract. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're now connecting the previous subtracts to each of these new ones. And what we need to subtract here is a notional remove foliage mask. And the way we do that is by, in fact, let's create a little bit more space again. So right click in some empty space here and do layer, landscape layer sample. And you can call whatever you want, but I'm going to call it remove foliage. And this is going to be a layer that we can paint on, and then it will subtract that from each of these layers. So I'm connecting it to the bottom pin of each subtract before finally passing it onto the landscape grass type. And again, let's just move it over slightly there. Okay, so we've probably tied up these nodes in a minute, but you can see that we've got the original masks now, and we've finally subtracted where we're going to paint the foliage out before we then pass it on. So that's all we need to do here. Let's click on save. And if we go back to the landscape, what we can now do is we can go into landscape mode, go to the paint layer, and what we're looking for here is a new layer called remove foliage. It may not appear automatically here, so what you'll need to do is just reload the level for it to appear. So let's do that. File and recent levels, reopen the Glacier Valley level. And once it's loaded up, let's go back into landscape mode, paint, and here's the new remove foliage layer. Now we need to add that into the level, so do the plus here. It's a non-weight blended layer, so we're just painting an alpha mask on there. And leave it in with the default settings and save it. You'll see there's now a new layer info here. Control-Shift-S to save everything. And then what we'll do is we will select that layer. And what you can do is you can start painting there. So this will affect everything. So let's just start off with these rocks here. So if I wanted to paint out this rock, I can simply click on that. And you can see that the rock has disappeared. Now be aware that every time you do a change like this, it will rerun your PCG as well. So if you want to do a lot of painting and then see the results, you can go to the PCG volume and pause regeneration until you've done everything. So just be aware that is something that will happen while you're painting. So if I go over here and say I want to paint out this clump of grass here, what I can do is I'm going to hold the left mouse button down and do an area until I lift my left mouse button up, it won't do the PCG. So what I'm doing is I'm going around a section, and once I've painted out everything I want to paint out, I will let go of the left mouse button. After a second or two, the PCG will recalculate, and you can see that those grasses have disappeared in that particular area. Now, if you want to restore elements here, instead of just using the left mouse button and painting that out, you can hold the shift button and paint it, and that will erase the remove foliage so that the foliage will reappear. So if I hold shift down and paint in that area, when I let go, after a second or two, the PCG task will rerun and the grass reappears where it originally was. If you ever need to just go back to a clean slate, you can right click on the layer and do clear layer, so there's no remove foliage masks at all, and then you can start painting again. Okay, so that's the end of this entire series. I hope you have managed to successfully build the auto material using all of the techniques I've shown in each episode. And more importantly, I hope you've gathered enough information through these videos to be able to tweak and customize and create the landscape material exactly the way you want for your project. So stay tuned for more videos in the future. As I said, this is the end of the landscape material series, but after a short break, I'll be back again with a new series on procedural content generation. So stay subscribed and stay tuned for that, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.